Hi, I'm Shonda Ramsey, your host and fellow indie author. Are you overwhelmed at the thought of publishing your book by yourself? Has fear kept you frozen in place, unable to write even the first word of your book? Not knowing the steps you need to take shouldn't stop you from writing. That's why I've asked for help from some amazing industry professionals, published authors, and others who are in the same situation as you to share their knowledge on the self-publishing process. Welcome to Dear Indie Author, where we inspire creative independence in every writer. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Shonda Ramsey. For the show notes and links, head over to shondaramsey.com and don't forget to join in on the conversations on Facebook. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a show and write a review where you listen to podcasts. Until next time, always remember, every writer deserves to see their words in print. Hey everyone, I am here with my friend Amber. Amber, we are going to jump in with some rapid fire icebreaker questions. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right. What is your favorite book genre?
Historical fiction.
Are you a pen or keyboard writer?
Oh, keyboard. I have to go keyboard.
Yeah. Are you a morning or night writer?
Nighttime. All the way.
Yeah. This one's going to be a hard one for you. Editing or writing?
Oh, that hurts my soul. Oh, oh my gosh. Okay. We're gonna go with writing because there's an aspect of editing that is writing. So
Okay.
go writing.
I'll allow it. Who was your writing mentor?
My current writing mentor is Chrissy Nelson. Writing mentor growing up was Octavia Butler.
Awesome. A good writing mentor is always helpful. What was the last book you read?
Okay, there are three answers to this. The last book I read for me was Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way. The last book I read, like copy edited, was Fiercely Single by Leah Tanner. Hers is coming out soon-ish, end of the year. And then the last book I read was to my little one. It was the Little Golden Book in Canto.
Oh, that's cute. That's fun. What is your favorite writing spot?
My couch.
Yeah, mine too, actually. What is your biggest writing pet peeve?
Can I say my mind?
Mhm. Yeah,
Overthinking and then the editing side of me that wants to go back and edit instead of like writing.
I'm sure that's difficult. I never even thought about that as you're writing it. You probably do have to have restraint to not edit yourself. That would be
Oh,
hard. What is your favorite snack?
grapes.
Yeah.
Definitely grapes.
Yeah. Are you someone who likes bright colors or neutrals?
Neutrals.
Do you judge a book by its title?
Oh, that's a mean question.
Mhm.
That's a really mean question. Sometimes, yeah, not gonna lie, sometimes.
Same, same. That's why I asked it because, like, for me, people always ask me, do you judge a book by its cover? Well, I'm a cover designer, so absolutely I do. You're an editor, so it makes sense that you would judge it by its title. All right. And then your last question. This is a good one too. What qualities do you look for when editing as a telltale sign of a good book?
Okay, I don't know if this will make sense, but trusting the reader.
That does make
Not,
sense, actually.
yeah, not oversharing. So trusting the reader.
I like that. That's good. Well, thank you for participating in my fun rapid fire icebreakers. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Amber Parr Burdett. I I've been an editor for the past 6+ years. Kind of loved editing my whole life. And am a senior copy editor at an online university, and then I freelance and copy edit manuscripts. So copy editing and developmental editing and all things editing are kind of like my wheelhouse. But I also have a children's book coming out in December, which I'm super excited about because it's my debut book. And it's called Shane and the Shh Sound.
I like that. I can't wait for that to come out too. I keep waiting, patiently waiting. And I have to say too that you are a phenomenal editor. I'm speaking firsthand because you actually worked on my book. So I think that it's just wonderful to find someone that you can connect with. And the way that you and I connected on that project was just amazing, absolutely amazing. So I wanted to at least say that. All right. Can you walk us through your editing process from manuscript evaluation to the final draft?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, it depends on what people come to me for editing. So you have to make sure when you reach out to your editor, you know what type of editing they do and type of editing you want done. So if someone hands me their manuscript after like a first draft, typically what we need to focus on is called developmental edits to
Mhm.
make sure the manuscript is consistent and to make sure that characters are consistent or like the character, even if it's a nonfiction, is consistent. And there's like no plot holes or gaps and everything just sounds authentic and there's no change in style or anything. And
Mhm.
then after that is copy edits slash line edits. And people use these interchangeably or different. Copy edits kind of help focus on like sentence level and paragraph level, making sure words sound good and it all flows when you're reading. And then line edits is like the grammar, punctuation, making sure everything is grammatically tip top shape.
Is that when you look for the past versus present tense also? Is during that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll look for that. I kind of look for it everywhere I go. Like developmental edits is kind of my main focus, and like I'll point that out to the author. Hey, you're kind of going back and forth between the two. We not
Mhm.
want to make sure we're consistent. So like making sure they get to pick. But
Yeah.
on like a paragraph level, sentence level, I kind of look for that more in the copy edits, because it does change the way you phrase words and sentences. But of course, if I get something and they just want line edits, they're like, don't touch the words, don't touch the sentences, then of course I'll look for it in line edit. So you kind of look for it in different phases in different ways.
Yeah. That's I think my biggest fail is changing my tenses all the time. It just happens when you're trying to write and you don't
It
think
happens
about it.
to everyone. Like they don't
Yeah.
even realize it happens to me sometimes where like I don't even realize it. And all of a sudden I went from recollecting something to I'm living it in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's super easy to overlook because it's your experience or your writing.
Yeah, it's hard. How do you approach working with authors to refine their storytelling, language, and structure?
I think of editing as a very collaborative process. Um, a lot of the authors I work with are self-publishing or hybrid publishing. And so they come and they don't necessarily know a whole lot about what the editor does. So they get super intimidated or they're like not sure what to ask. But
Mhm.
editing on my end is like a very collaborative. What do you want? Like, what are you hoping to get out of this? And like there's lots of comments and there's lots of questions. And I do try to point out the good parts too, because I'm not trying to overwhelm anyone that I work with. But I just think of it as like something you're working with someone else to help make your writing and your message the best it can be.
I like that. I think that's great. What common mistakes do you often see in manuscripts, and how do you help the authors overcome those?
There's a lot of little things here and there, but I think, like you said, one of the biggest is the switching tenses.
Mhm.
And the other one is not trusting the reader and
Mm,
wanting to over explain things, especially new authors. Like you'll kind of see it as if you followed an author from like start to other books, you'll see that they like don't overshare as much. Because when you're a first time writer, you want to just get it all out and like share everything, but you kind of have to trust the person to make the connections themselves
leave a little
while
bit to
leading
the
you.
imagination, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. I never really thought about it that way. I think that's good advice. How do you balance preserving an author's unique voice while making necessary edits and improvements?
A great question.
Mhm.
So I have also worked as a ghostwriter. Like I've done a lot of projects that have been ghostwriting. So I feel like I sort of have a knack for understanding someone's voice and tone. And that's also why I feel like editing is such a collaborative process. Um, and so I try to do kind of like a first pass through at least the first chapter, to get a feel for their writing style. Um, and writings come to me in all different stages. So if I
Mhm.
read through and do like that first pass, I feel like I kind of grasp up what they're trying to say, then I go for it. Like I'm in the zone and I feel like I try to use their words and help just change things that are getting to their core message because they're trying to share something. And I make sure when they've pitched their book to me, like they understand what their message is. And if they don't, then I kind of have to like pull it out of them a little bit.
Yeah,
So I
to get it. And
get
that is something that's hard, especially as a new author, knowing what your core message is, as you're writing it, it's kind of like you're building it as you go. And so it is one of those apprehensive things, I think, as a new author where you're just like, I think I know what it is, but maybe I don't. And so that makes it a little hard too.
oh yeah, definitely.
What kind of support do you provide to authors, especially those publishing their first book?
Any and all. No.
Yeah.
Like I said, they come to me at all different stages. And so if they need help defining their message, so I've started kind of I've had a couple of people that have helped coach through the publishing process. And so if they need help there, so it's kind of again asking them what they need and figuring out what they need and then offering packages based upon exactly what they need. So guiding, I literally feel like sometimes I'm taking them by the hand and like guiding
Mhm.
them through the process to make sure, I don't know, is that your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that that's awesome because a lot of times authors don't get that. And so knowing that there is someone out there who does provide that extra level of kind of handholding, throughout their book process and ensuring that it still matches their voice and tone, I think that that's really important. And it's really hard to find. So I love that you do that, actually. You're working on your first children's book to be published at the end of the year. Can you share your writing process for this book?
Yes. So it is officially done, like in hand. Super excited.
Oh,
First time I'm revealing it in public.
love it.
And so it kind of started because I've helped so many authors. And like when you're in the industry, all of a sudden you're like, I have a book in me too, but I don't know how to get it out. So I started with a children's book because it's based on characters my dad told us stories about when me and my siblings were younger. And so Susie and Zach are the two main characters who are helping their friend Shane. And I wanted it to be something personal, something that related to me, not just one of my dad's stories, because I don't want the first thing I publish to be someone else's story under my own name, of course.
Right.
And so I had to like dig through and find something that was both specific and very relatable to me. And so I focused on a speech sound because when I was younger, up until the third grade, I kind of had a speech impediment. Like I had a tongue thrust, so I didn't even pronounce my own name right. And so the whole book and premise is about this kid who can't pronounce his own name, and two friends are helping him figure that out. So my writing process was figuring out what I wanted to write about, figuring out how it connected to me so I wouldn't burn out because it is a long process to get to
Mhm.
publishing. And
Yes.
then kind of like writing out a first outline, scratching that whole outline and writing out another one, and then changing that outline into a draft and just revising and revising until I felt like it was ready for beta readers. And then
Mhm.
after that, the copy editor. And then after that, the pitching it to publishers and things like that.
Awesome. That's a great process. How has your experience as an editor influenced your approach to writing your book?
I feel like as an editor and just as someone who's been in the publishing industry for so long, I have been in every phase, like every different phase that it takes to publish a book. So I was able to see like how long it would take and see the end of like it's not just the editing phase, it's not just the writing phase. There's so much more that goes into it. And because of that, I was then able to pick a message that resonated with me, that it wasn't just I want to write a book and get it out as soon as possible and make
Mhm.
sure that it's a bestseller because it's just going to be amazing because I write amazing. Like
Yeah.
I had to actually focus and be realistic and then go back through. And one tip I will give authors if they kind of like edit as they go is to change your font to white. Like if
Mhm.
you're writing on a Word doc, because then your brain can't go back and see what you've written, even though you know you've written it. So your brain doesn't like naturally gravitate back up towards it. You just have to keep going. Like set a timer and just write it out.
I love that tip. So that's great. I'm gonna do that because in November we always participate in the NaNoWriMo where you have to write 50,000 words that month. And I have a hard time not editing what I've written, and so if you edit while you write, you're never gonna hit that, right? Because it takes a long time to hit it. So I think I'm gonna do that this year. That is great advice. I love
Yeah.
that.
And then, or like go to a new page or like different sections.
Yeah, I love that. That is awesome. What challenges did you face while writing your children's book, and how did you overcome them?
The biggest challenge was the imposter syndrome. And you're attached, like your book is your little book baby. And
Mhm,
it's partially my story. Not exactly, like it's not my story growing up, like, but it's still a part of me. So I
mhm.
had to be vulnerable and I had to be as authentic as I could. And so just actually sitting down and like dedicating the time and then believing that I had what it took to become an author, not just a writer, but an author.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's something that everybody can relate to. We all struggle with that from time to time. How do you manage your time between editing for others and working on your own writing projects?
Another great one. I am still figuring it out, but
Mhm,
time blocks. My writing mentor, Chrissy, taught me that like you dedicate chunks of time to specific tasks.
mhm,
And then when my other writing mentor, I put in quotes because it was Octavia Butler. She's an amazing author from years ago. Um, I read some of her biography once, and she said that she was, I believe, if I remember correctly, a single mother. Um, and so she had to wake up super, super early at like 5 a.m. in order to get any writing done so she could then go work her jobs to provide for her family. And she
mhm,
like had the mindset like, I will be a best-selling author. I will be, and like anything she wrote down, she like made happen. So she would write those goals. And so anytime that I dedicate, I have to like basically divide my time because I also have a 2-year-old kid.
mhm,
So I had to give up a little extra sleep or give up TV time or give up scrolling, not completely, but just so I could dedicate like this time is for writing. Like this is my time. This time is for editing and somehow fit it in between a 2-year-old schedule
mm,
or at the time 1-year-old who changes all the time and rely on my spouse and
mhm.
rely on a sitter every once in a while so I could get it done and just um yeah, time blocks is the easy answer.
Yeah,
Dedicate
that's a good
time,
answer.
write it out.
Stick to it. Make it a
Yeah.
schedule. I like that. What advice would you give to aspiring authors who are hesitant to share their work with an editor?
Reach out to your editor beforehand, ask them for a sample edit. I give sample edits to anyone who wants a like 300 to 500 word sample edit. And just I've worked with a couple authors who at first were really nervous, like, are you going to steal my work? Are you going to take what I've done? And no, like you do have to have a little bit of trust. You have
Mhm.
to trust your editor. And if you don't trust them, then maybe you should look for someone else.
Yeah. Find someone
um,
you can trust.
yeah.
That's a very good point. How do you collaborate with authors in a way that stays true to the author's vision while benefiting from professional editing? So, like what they hope their book will look like in the end, not necessarily their voice, but the vision for the book.
I think that's talking with them and making sure they have a clear vision for what they're wanting to get out. And that goes back to having a clear message
Mm,
and and that's like where does your reader start and where are you hoping they finish? Or where does the story start and how are you hoping it finishes? And if you can clearly in like one sentence or two sentences tell me what your message is, I'll have a clear idea of the vision you're hoping to achieve.
mm. That's great. Yeah, that's good. How can authors effectively outline their concept to avoid feeling overwhelmed?
Everyone does it so different.
Mm,
And I've coached people to do it very different based upon kind of how I've worked with them. But what works the most for me and people I've worked with is having that start and having that finish, and then creating an outline of like chapters or sections that is like, this is where they're starting and this is where they're ending. What are the 12 steps they need to get to where they're ending?
mm,
Okay, now like within this first step to this, like this beginning to their first step, how do you get to there? Like write that out. And this is mainly for nonfiction writers,
mhm.
because fiction is a whole nother ball game.
Yeah. Yeah, fiction's a little harder because then you gotta have your highs and your lows.
Oh yeah.
Peaks and valleys. There's a lot of peaks and valleys in non or in fiction. But
Mhm.
even with nonfiction, that's really difficult because sometimes, especially if you're sharing your story, you just want to tell it in chronological order, right? Because in your mind, that makes the most sense. You tell it how it happened, but it doesn't always make sense to retell it in chronological order, as I found when writing my book. I know mine is not in chronological order. It kind of bounces around a little bit just to make the story, their beginning to end journey better. So that is tricky.
And I also want to point out, especially with your story, which I love, like, I'm not even just saying that because we're talking. I love Shonda's story. Like, hers is one that I was like, please give me more. Please write more so I can either keep reading it or keep editing them. Um, but you want the reader to start where you want them to start. And so if Shonda would have started at the very beginning of her story, which I won't reveal her story because you just need to read it. It's fantastic and amazing. And if she wanted them to start in chronological order, the reader would be so confused. But
Yeah.
how you wrote is you literally were like, let me take you by the hand and kind of
Mhm.
guide you through my story. So here's where I am. And I'm not perfect yet. I'm still
Mhm.
figuring it out. But
Yeah.
here's where I'm at. Now let's go through like how I got here and how we all can move forward from here.
Yeah.
And that's what I love because you're talking to the reader and
Mhm.
you're helping me and helping everyone who reads your book understand where you started, but where you're at right now.
Yeah, I think that that's important too. It's so easy to get stuck in that. We got to be chronological, but you really don't. You really don't need to start chronologically. You can look at what your transformation is for the reader. What are they going to get, when they're done? And then figure out your 12 steps like you said. I think that that's really important to do. Just know what it is that they need to do and then work through it that way. So I love that. That's a great tip for sure. What tips can you offer for outlining and structuring a story before diving into the writing process?
I think that goes back to like creating the beginning, creating the end,
Hmm.
creating the steps. And so those steps then become your outline. Like those are your chapters. And then from there, you break it down even more and even more. And people think they have to write in chronological order.
Hmm.
And I actually, or like not even in like of their life, like they think I have to write chapter one, then chapter two, then chapter three.
Hmm.
And there are many times that that's just not possible and not doable for your brain or for yourself because like you have a story that you want to revolve your book around. And so sometimes you have to write a scene in order to understand, like, I want this scene in the middle or I want this scene at the beginning, but then you have to add context around it. So be open to jumping around from different section and don't self-edit because you haven't written the other sections. Just like get it on paper, get all of it as much as you can on paper, and then refine it after because you
Yeah.
can't work with something you don't have.
I think too in the editing process you'll find too, especially if you do developmental edits, right? You'll find that it'll move anyway. So it's
Mhm.
best to just get it all out. I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like sometimes I call that the messy draft. It's really hard sometimes to just push through that, but sometimes you just need to push right through it. And I have to say too, so outlining, I didn't realize, so I write fiction as well. And like I can sit down and write fiction and not need, an outline. It's not the greatest, but I can do it. But with nonfiction, you need an outline. Like you have to have a plan because otherwise that gets really tricky. And so that's what I learned in my process of writing was, if I'm going to write a nonfiction book, I really need to be prepared. And outlining that definitely is great for preparation in order to set you up for success.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I will say really quick, like with fiction, you still, even if you don't need a complete outline, like people outline for nonfiction, you
Hmm.
still want to have that starting point and that ending point, and
Hmm.
probably a midpoint, like the
Hmm.
climax
Yes.
or whatever up or down that you're wanting to convey. Because if you don't have those written out, you could have like 50,000 words and you haven't even gotten to the climax of the novel.
Yes. Yes.
And those are all wasted almost. Or the reader at the end is like, wait, what? Like,
Mhm.
where did we go?
I think I think you're on to that for sure because the first book that I started writing was romance and I struggled because I did not have an outline. I kind of had a general idea of what I wanted to do, but I didn't take the time to do the outline. And so I wrote a story, but is it a good story? No. I mean, it's okay. There's hope for it. It's not completely a loss, right? But
Mhm.
it needs to be restructured properly. And so learning that with the nonfiction book that I just came out with, I think that that's going to help me be an even better fiction writer too. So I love that you help authors with that process because I think there are a lot of us, especially first time authors, who just we don't know where to begin. So having that guidance is always a big help. How can an editor help authors articulate their message more clearly and effectively?
We listen to what you're saying and we read between the lines. Like
Mm,
it's not just grammar. So as we're reading and or talking with you, like during a discovery call or if you want to meet or a coaching call, as we're listening to what you're saying, we're trying to like pull out what you're saying and we refine it. So how can we help? By you trusting us
mm,
and then being open to the change. But if we're not getting it right, like as editors, because sometimes I didn't understand a sentence or I didn't understand the message correctly, you have to tell us. So trust us, but there will be different sections, hopefully, that they can like review or ask us, like I will repeat back what you've said in the way that I understand it, or in the refined way that I understand it, or
mhm,
have reviews after like a first round edit or a second round edit. So you can like reject or accept every change that I've made or answer the questions that I have about a section, because that's what we're here to do. It's your message. I
mm,
want your core message. I don't want my message. You didn't
yeah,
hire me to rewrite everything you've written. I want your message. And I took you on as a client because I believed in your message.
mm. I love that. I think that's great. A lot of people get so scared when it
Mhm.
comes to handing over their book to an editor. They think when they get it back and they see all the changes, they're like, oh, I'm a terrible writer. But really, that's not the case. You're
Mhm.
just helping refine it and make it more effective to the reader, which is a really wonderful thing. What strategies do you recommend for authors to ensure their writing remains authentic and true to their voices?
Get it all out on paper and then revise.
Mhm.
I don't strategies, that's a really hard one just because everyone is so different. And I just feel like just getting it out and like trusting yourself and being authentic
Mhm.
in your writing, if it's nonfiction, or staying true to the characters and like getting in the character's head that you're writing about for fiction, that will truly help you deliver your message and just freely write. And as you're not editing as you're going, you're just letting it all out on the table so you can review it and see, like, oh, there's a hole here. Oh, this isn't consistent. And
Mm,
just don't get glued to like a specific scene or specific
mm.
plots or specific, you have to be open to change, even
Yeah.
yourself as you're revising.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, just like and touching point on getting it all out. If you're writing a nonfiction book and it is a personal recollection, something that you have been through, I think what that would entail to me or what that tells me is don't be afraid to say it all. Just lay it all out there.
Mhm.
Some of it may be edited out and that's okay, but get it all out.
Mhm.
I think
And a
that's
quote
great.
that I've heard that I absolutely love is, if you're writing a nonfiction book or a memoir, but you're not willing to be authentic on paper, you have no reason to write it. If
Mm,
you're not going to be your true self and tell the full true story, you probably shouldn't be writing about this topic. And one other thing that I'll say in regard to fiction is it's okay for your entire plot to change. Like when I was writing this book, the Shane and the Sh sound,
mhm,
it at first was animals. It was a snake. The first draft
mm,
that I wrote, like I was ready to go, like ready to have it illustrated. It was animals because I didn't want to use my dad's characters for my story. I wanted it to be my story. And all of a sudden, after right before I went to the illustration phase, I was like, no, this doesn't feel right. So I had to trust myself and completely let go of those characters that I'd come to love and hold on to. So that way I could rewrite it. And I love it so much more now because I
mm.
trusted myself.
That's awesome. I like that you were able to recognize that in yourself and make a change, which is great. Sometimes that's hard to do, so that's really good. Are there any upcoming projects or initiatives you're excited about sharing?
Yes. So with the children's book I have coming out, I also have a moral mothering brand that I've been working on. That's a brand for moms, because everything that I've been doing and all the children's books that I will write and have drafted out, and are getting closer to the illustration phase, those books will all end in the moral of the story is ... And as an editor, what I'm trying to get is the moral of your story.
Mm.
So I am also loving working with moms, and hopefully if they want to write a story, I'd love to work with them too.
Mhm.
But
I
loving
like
working with moms to discover the moral of their story. And so like the big thing and project that I'm working on is the question. It's still a concept, but getting people to ask themselves the question, what is the moral of your story?
I like that. That's good. That's very thought-provoking too. So a lot of people, I think, can just stop and think about that. Sometimes we don't think about those things. So that's really awesome. I can't wait to see that unfold too. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah. I'm just, first off, so, so glad that I was able to talk with you today, Shonda. We've messaged back and forth for a long time, but we've never actually like met face to face, Zoom screen to Zoom screen, one-on-one. And
Yeah.
I'm just honored that I'm able to talk to authors who are wanting to write their books. And I really do want to help anyone who wants to write their book. I know Shonda has a ton of services, but if editing is something you're looking for, or ghostwriting or co-writing parts of your book,
Mhm.
please reach out to me at amber@burdett.us or at arpar.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Amber Ray Edits. And anyone who reaches out to me, I have you can just message me and let me know like you came from Shonda's podcast. And I have a free Refine Your First Draft workbook for
Mm,
authors. And
that's
that applies
awesome.
for first draft, because everyone's first draft is in a different stage, or last draft right before you go to editing. It goes everything from refining to strengthening your plot to enhancing your characters and improving your dialogue.
Love that. That's amazing. We'll make sure we add that to the show notes too. That way that they can head over and get that as well. All
Perfect.
right. I would love for you to share the letter you wrote to our audience as we close up today's interview.
Dear indie author, believe in yourself and your unique voice. Your story matters, and there are readers out there waiting to connect with it. The writing journey can feel isolating and overwhelming. Don't be afraid to seek support and guidance along the way. Whether through joining writing groups, attending workshops, or working with an editor, surrounding yourself with fellow writers and mentors can provide invaluable insights and encouragement. Never, never underestimate the power of your words. Don't let the fear of not being enough hold you back from telling your story, because you are more than enough. You have the power to change lives with your words. Let your message help others along the way. All the best, Amber.
Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Shonda Ramsey. For the show notes and links, head over to shondaramsey.com and don't forget to join in on the conversations on Facebook. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a show and write a review where you listen to podcasts. Until next time, always remember, every writer deserves to see their words in print.